The night was calm inside Richard Hayes's penthouse office, the city lights glittering beneath him like jewels scattered across velvet. He had just finished sealing a billion-dollar deal when his phone vibrated sharply. Annoyed, he almost ignored it, until he noticed the caller ID unknown hospital number. Something in his chest tightened. "Mr. Hayes?" A shaky female voice broke through the line. "I'm Nurse Claire from St. Mary's. Please don't panic. But your daughter has been found unconscious on the street. She's here in critical condition." The word slammed into him like a hammer. For a moment, Richard forgot how to breathe. His daughter Amelia, the only child he had left after his bitter divorce, was supposed to be at her university dorm, safe, preparing for midterms. What was she doing on the street? Why unconscious? He gripped the edge of his desk so hard his knuckles turned white. "What happened?" he barked, though his voice trembled. "Sir, you need to come immediately. We're doing everything we can." The line went dead. Richard stood frozen, his carefully constructed world of wealth and power collapsing in seconds. Nothing, no fortune, no empire, could shield him from the terror of losing his child. Richard stormed out of his penthouse, his heart thundering louder than the city traffic below. His driver, startled by his urgency, barely had time to open the car door before Richard shoved himself inside. "To St. Mary's Hospital," he ordered, his voice breaking in a way it never had in boardrooms or negotiations. For once, he wasn't the calm, untouchable billionaire. He was just a desperate father. The limousine sped through the neon-lit streets of New York, weaving between cars as horns blared. Richard clutched his phone, staring at Amelia's smiling photo on the lock screen. She had been so full of life, so bright. How could she now be lying unconscious, fighting for breath? Every red light felt like a curse. He shouted at the driver, "Faster! Do whatever it takes!" His mind raced with questions he couldn't answer. Why was she alone on the street? Who was with her? Was this an accident or something darker? For the first time in decades, fear, not business, not money, ruled his thoughts. All his billions couldn't buy him time, and every second felt stolen from his daughter's life. By the time the hospital lights came into view, Richard was trembling. His empire meant nothing. Only Amelia mattered now. The glass doors of St. Mary's slid open, and Richard rushed inside, his expensive suit clashing with the chaos of the emergency ward. Nurses in scrubs hurried past. Patients moaned softly in wheelchairs, and the sharp smell of antiseptic filled the air. But Richard saw none of it. His eyes searched only for Amelia. At the reception desk, he slammed his palm down. "My daughter! Amelia Hayes! Where is she?" The nurse behind the counter flinched, recognizing the name. "Please, sir." "She's in the emergency room. The doctors are with her." Richard's throat tightened. "Take me to her." "I'm sorry, sir, but you can't go inside yet." Her voice was polite but firm, the kind used to calm grieving families. Through a small glass window, Richard caught a glimpse. Machines blinking. Doctors huddled, Amelia's pale body surrounded by wires. His chest heaved as if someone had stolen the air from the room. He tried to push forward, but a security guard stopped him gently. "Please wait here, sir." "They're doing all they can." For the first time in his life, Richard Hayes felt powerless. Money couldn't break through these walls. And silence, cold, unbearable silence, was his only companion. Richard sank into the cold plastic chair outside the emergency ward, his trembling hands buried in his face. For years he had drowned himself in empire building, climbing higher with each ruthless deal. He told himself it was all for Amelia, that every dollar, every mansion, every private jet was meant to give her a perfect life. But now, staring through the hospital glass at his unconscious daughter, he saw the truth. He hadn't given her what she needed most: time, love, presence. He had been a ghost in her childhood, a stranger in her teenage years. Memories stabbed at him. Amelia's 10th birthday, when she'd blown out candles alone because he was in Dubai closing a deal. Her graduation ceremony, where his empty seat had spoken louder than any speech. "Is this my punishment?" he whispered to himself, voice cracking. "Did she fall because I wasn't there to catch her?" Every tick of the clock felt like a hammer against his heart. For the first time in decades, Richard Hayes, the man the world saw as indestructible, felt utterly fragile. The doctor finally emerged, his expression grave. Richard sprang to his feet. "How is she? Tell me." "She's stable for now," the doctor said carefully. "But we found traces of narcotics in her system, strong ones. We believe she overdosed." The word struck Richard harder than any market crash. Drugs, his Amelia? His perfect, disciplined daughter? His knees nearly gave out, and he gripped the wall for support. "No, there must be a mistake," he stammered. "She wouldn't." But the doctor's steady eyes silenced him. Richard's world shattered again. He had believed his money protected her from the darkness of the world. But it hadn't. She had been drowning in pain he never even noticed. As he stood there, memories returned with brutal clarity. Her tired eyes during their rare dinners, her fake smiles in family photos, the way she lingered before asking, "Daddy, are you busy again?" The truth was no longer hidden. It was a mirror reflecting his neglect. Amelia hadn't fallen by accident. She had been silently crying for help, and he had been deaf to it. As Richard wrestled with guilt, a nurse approached. "Sir, there's someone here asking about your daughter." Confused, Richard turned and saw a young man standing nervously near the waiting area. His clothes were rumpled, his eyes bloodshot as if he hadn't slept in days. "Who are you?" Richard demanded, his voice sharp. The stranger hesitated. "My name is Daniel. I was with Amelia tonight." Richard's fists clenched. "With her? You mean when she collapsed?" Daniel nodded, his voice trembling. "She trusted me. She didn't want you to know how much she was hurting. I tried to help her, I swear, but she collapsed before I could call anyone. The nurse found us." Suspicion burned in Richard's chest. Was Daniel a friend, or the one who had led his daughter into drugs? His billionaire instinct screamed never trust strangers. Yet there was something in Daniel's broken tone that made him pause. "Why didn't she come to me?" Richard asked, his voice cracking. Daniel lowered his eyes. "Because she didn't believe you'd listen." The words pierced Richard deeper than any blade. Hours later, as Richard sat by Amelia's hospital bed, a nurse handed him her bag. "These were her belongings, sir." With trembling hands, he searched through it. Lipstick, textbooks, a broken phone. Then he found it, a small leather-bound diary. He hesitated, then opened it. "April 5, Daddy cancelled again. Said he was busy. Why am I never important enough? May 12th. Everyone thinks I'm lucky because I'm rich, but I feel so alone. Sometimes I wish I could disappear. June 20th. Daniel listens. At least someone does." Each entry was a knife twisting deeper. Tears blurred Richard's vision as he realized his daughter's loneliness had been screaming. From these pages, and he had been too blind to see. On the last page, her handwriting wavered. "Maybe if I vanish, Daddy will finally notice me." The diary slipped from his hands. Richard pressed his face into his palms, sobbing silently. For the first time, he understood that Amelia hadn't been searching for money. She had been searching for him. News of Amelia's collapse spread like wildfire. Cameras swarmed outside St. Mary's, reporters shouting, "Billionaire's daughter overdoses." Richard's estranged wife, Catherine, stormed into the hospital. Her eyes blazed with fury. "This is your fault, Richard," she hissed. "I begged you to be present in her life, but you were too busy buying your next empire." Richard flinched at her words, unable to defend himself. She was right. He had hidden behind contracts and bank accounts while Amelia slipped through his fingers. The argument escalated. Catherine's voice cracked with rage and heartbreak. "You cared more about your reputation than your own child. Now look what's happened." Their shouting echoed down the sterile corridor, attracting stares. A nurse finally intervened. "Please, both of you. She needs peace, not chaos." Richard fell silent, staring at Amelia's fragile body through the glass. For once, Catherine's accusations didn't feel like attacks. They felt like truth. Wealth had divided them. Pride had destroyed them. And now their daughter lay in between, broken because of both their failings. That night, alarms blared from Amelia's room. Doctors and nurses rushed inside, shouting codes Richard barely understood. He pressed against the glass, horror freezing his veins. "Her heart rate's dropping," a nurse cried. The flatline beep pierced the hallway like a death bell. "No, no!" Richard's knees buckled. He pounded on the door, screaming, "Save her! Please, I'll give you anything, just don't let her die." Catherine collapsed beside him, sobbing uncontrollably. For once, they weren't enemies. They were just parents, watching their child slip away. Richard dropped to the floor, clasping his hands together in a desperate prayer. He hadn't prayed in decades, too proud, too self-reliant. But now pride meant nothing. "God, please," he whispered, tears streaming down his face. "Take everything I own, everything I am. Just give me one more chance to hold her, please." Minutes stretched into eternity. Then suddenly, beep, beep, beep. Her heart found its rhythm again. The doctor sighed in relief. Richard sobbed like a broken man. His empire could have collapsed that very moment, and he wouldn't have cared. Amelia's heartbeat was the only treasure he needed. The next morning, sunlight streamed gently through the hospital blinds. Amelia stirred, her eyelashes fluttering as her eyes slowly opened. "Amelia," Richard whispered, clutching her hand as if it might vanish. Her lips parted, her voice weak. "Daddy?" Tears spilled down his face. He hadn't cried in years, but now he wept openly. "I'm here, sweetheart. I'm not leaving you again, ever." Her fragile fingers squeezed his. "I thought you didn't care." Richard shook his head violently. "I was blind. I thought money could protect you, but I was wrong. From now on, you're my only priority. I'll never let you feel alone again." Catherine stood quietly at the doorway, her anger softened by the sight of father and daughter reunited. For Richard Hayes, the billionaire who once believed wealth was everything, life had finally taught its harshest lesson. True wealth wasn't in numbers, buildings, or bank accounts. It was in the fragile heartbeat of the girl lying before him, the daughter he almost lost. And with that heartbeat, Richard was given something no money could buy: a second chance.